Whoa. Let's get back at it. I need to get input working today. So that is where I am at, left off from yesterday. The input request is kind of unique in that it has to kind of hold space until... or it's got to hold on until I can actually get input from someone. But it's got to continually display the input buffer too. So I think what I need to have is thinking last night, is a special type of display that's fed a string. And then as I'm recording input or whatnot, it will be pushed out to draw that input, which will then the home screen will handle. So it's not something that normal people will actually interact with. And by normal people, I mean it's going to be a hidden instruction, much in the same way that these instructions are hidden, which I'm going to move up into the system column instead of being put at the bottom, because those are all system level ones. So let's see. Python doesn't get them, so they are excluded from this, but a program does have access to them, is how this works. So I'm going to try it like this. So I need the ability to get an input buffer returned to me, and so it's kind of like a get key almost, but it's not. It's like a get key, but I could get a whole array of characters that come in. So the command perspective, it's something like this: protected var get text input. So this is get key. And that returns an integer with the key code. This is like get text, maybe we'll call it. Doesn't take anything. Just returns, kind of like get key, it will return the list of characters entered since the last time that you requested it, so it won't be a blocking command. Get text request. Okay. Oh, I forgot to put the underscore in front of it. So that's going to give me input. So I think then what I also need is one called display input. This doesn't return anything. This is straight up publish. I'm not sure I'll need these yet, but we'll see. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. And so what display input will do is it'll take a string, and then in the home screen it will display it, knowing that it's going to be augmented over time. Yeah, because you could backspace, which then means that you have to kind of think about the whole nature of it and where it starts and where it ends. If you feed it the entire input at one time. Did I put that above get text? I think I did. No, I didn't. The other feature of display input will be that it shows the cursor in terms of where you are, which is always towards the end of the string, except when you arrow back, which is kind of interesting. So do I allow you to arrow back to enter, or do you have to delete everything? I think for simplicity's sake, you should be able to arrow back, which is kind of a different operation. So maybe these two things aren't together what I'm looking for. Ooh. I'm really going to need to think about this. It's just the answer is not obvious to me on how I should make this work in the structure. So the computer receives a request like that's input here. And what it needs to do is it's going to have to execute a special... It's going to have to wait for the input to actually, be done. But it's a special kind of wait. Really, most of this happens within the processing on the home screen, which only takes specific commands that it has to interact with. So for instance, it takes display and output. Okay, well, let's think about it from the home page here. To start an input, I have to begin it in some way. So if I'm going to do this in a... And what that will do is it's going to set up a input cursor, basically. So if we treat that up, well, then it's going to need a process input, which will take the two forms. It will be basically like key input. Which will be effectively a queue of keys at this point in time. We're just going to go whole hog into the MonoGame side of it. And that can be keys up or keys down. But that basically I need to figure out how I'm going to do that dynamic. So like if I press the arrow down and then back up, for the arrow to go back in the, like this, and move the cursor back so that I can input into my input. And then I actually text input, which is characters. That gets put in. And then at some point in time, when one of these keys equals enter, which actually happens in this one as well. You know, maybe I just won't allow you to back arrow and to do an edit at first. So again, what I'm talking about here is, let's say you take Pico 8 and this receives input hello, or is that an H? Capital H is a V? Oh, I didn't really. Sorry that they have a different keyboard if you do that. And you back arrow like this, you can move the cursor around in the input line or in the display line. I wonder what happens to they. Yeah, so they. I just kind of want to see what happens if I go crazy here and keep going and going. Oh, so there's a limit on how much. Yeah, and then it scrolls. So the input buffer is limited. Which I suppose I could follow that. All right, so let's return to what I was going to do yesterday. Let's add an input program. And we know that this was going to take a prompt, which could be empty. Input doesn't clear home, but it does do a special display of the prompt. Because it'll do it, but then it starts like an edit pattern on the home screen. So these capabilities have to be accessible to the home screen. And eventually there'll be a value that gets returned here. Okay. So again, I can think here of specific commands I might need to do. And what I would get back from those commands. And realizing that I don't need to necessarily have this be all simple, because it is going to be special too. So yeah, let's do this. So right next to get key, we'll have one called get text. And this was not going to be like that. It'll be, I'm not going to expose this one quite yet. So we'll put it down here. And in fact, these I was going to move up just to keep things consistent. And what this will do is return immediate the input buffer dot get text, get last text. I don't know, we'll just call that. Just like we had get last key. So get text is an instruction. That returns from this. So this, like the last key up, would be a flushable queue of characters. And this doesn't need to be a queue, it is a list though. And we'll do it just the same way. So we do that, text input dot clear, and we return the value. The one thing that kind of stinks about this is going to sit there and collect while I'm actually like just doing other screens. So it's not like input is, I guess the home key or the home screen could enable it. Or I could have a flush on it. So that when I start up the home screen, I flush it and then I get value, but or not home screen, but or when I run certain commands, it enables it. So here, I have another instruction to begin. And this doesn't really... So this will begin recording text. So in order for it to get, and so begin text will tell the input buffer to begin text input. And this will be and text input. This will just be get text input. So it's pretty much a transactional relationship, right? So we'll just do it like this. And then when we, if text input is null, we don't record anything. Otherwise, text input dot add e dot character. So then the input program will start its loop by saying, which I have to do at the program level here, protected void begin text input, which will publish a new begin text instruction. This will be end. We'll just call it end text. Put an input here. And this will be get text. And this is a request that returns a char array. Okay, so now my input program can call out and say begin text. Should end with end text. as an empty string. Forever. We'll get the text buffer. Again, this doesn't give me the back and forward characters, but and then I have to have something to kind of display input. Which has to be stateful. So it has to know where the input started and then where it's going. I suppose I could have the concept of a range, like a text range. So this would also be a home command, whereas begin text, this is not home, but this would be protected, void, begin, range. So really what we're doing is we're streaming, instead of streaming data from, you know, traditional standard output, we're streaming it from standard input. And it's just happenstance that that ends when I'm I still need to think about how this is going to be, how this will be done here, how it'll be displayed. Because this is just going to, the input program is just going to continually get text. In fact, I could do this without actually displaying the text, right? I just say if value, I just have to interpret each character. So if it's a carriage return, or just to be safe, a new line, then and I'm not going to wait a frame for this one, I think. Oh, maybe I will. So we get text, we then go through each character until we end. Case backspace as we get rid of the... And this should be a string builder. Start at the last index, remove 1. Therewise, we append it. Just like that. Now I could have it so that input could be told on begin text. So begin text is a command that pipes into the input buffer to do this, and receive text input. But theoretically, that input could also tell this to start begin input or whatever and start pulling from in the same way. And they work together, but they're totally disjointed. Like this command is recording it in one way, and the actual what you see on the screen isn't the same value that I'm getting here. I think that technically could work. Or instead of calling this begin text, I call it begin input. And this receives the prompt or the question mark. Instead of text, it's get input. And so what begin input does is it will tell the input buffer to start receiving. But maybe it tells the home screen to start an input display. Again, it has to record actual so this could be input buffer begin whatever, and then it would be home dot prompt maybe and prompt will, this is so messy. I think a good way to structure this is crazy. Kind of like display in that it finds the, oh, and this needs the foreground and background. prompt works like display, where it starts with a cursor, it goes till it finds a blank row. It'll scroll if it needs to. You know, it really does all the things display does, except for it doesn't do this at the end necessarily. And it doesn't do this right here because it's purely text input. No reason to couple these in any way. For now, we can do it later. So finds it, gets it. It's going to output the prompt like this. Oh, these should be bytes, I suppose. Displays the prompt. Now, I'm not sure what happens if the prompt goes beyond, like, this will just put the thing there, but and then it doesn't increase the row like this, so not sure why that says program there. Oh, you know what it's doing is that the root program has that. Then it prompts for name. Now I just need to show the cursor, and then when I enter text input, it needs to receive that. Or needs to display it up to and including the point where I actually press enter. So it's kind of got to be like in a special mode. Yeah, these don't work like a normal console do. So what I think I might do here is just make this work, and then we'll figure it out later. So we get text input from the input buffer. I'm going to go to home, and we're going to display input, whatever. And then we'll return that immediately. Just to keep this close to home for now, I'm going to have a cursor that is global called the input cursor. That is null by default. When I begin input, that will be the input cursor, like that will get set. Then if the input cursor is null, these don't have any effect. Oh, yeah. Because that input cursor is a whatever, so these, if they don't, I really should return like an invalid operation or something or throw an error. But here I'm going to make it so that if this starts and has a value, then it also blows up. So this should be the matter of just finishing off the display here, which is increase my roll and scroll. So these all need the foreground and background. I've copied this line so many times I should have just put it into a like a tuple or something, or some sort of structure that can be passed in. Oy. Now, I mean, theoretically, I could accumulate the data here and have this responsible for doing that, versus doing it in that input program. But then it would have to signal out that it's done back to it. Yeah, just for simplicity, I think this, or following the pattern, this kind of makes sense. The other thing that, because this is a nullable struct, I think I will make this a class instead. That way I don't have to make this nullable. I think I made it a struct just so I didn't have to allocate. Why? Cursor's a class now. Oh, I made cell. Stupid. Cell. Okay. So we should be able to just use this here. And I can just keep that the same way. That should be fine. Okay. Now comes the hard part of all this. Is that I basically just display characters in the same way that this does. Except for if ch dot new line, or if it then I need to reverse the cell. Which is a complicated task, actually. Until the start of where the initial point was. This is getting messy. Oops, 1 second. Okay. So I think the cursor's part of this, but it's not. It's really an edit range is what I need. And like I said, the cursor's just a part of it. So the cursor and I'm just going to make it a class too because that'll make this simpler for has a position in it in the edit range. But it also needs to know where it starts, so so this gets set once at the start of it, so it's immutable. Well, it's sort of immutable. I mean, it could be mutated, but it's really a read-only thing. I don't want them mutating. So maybe that's not the best structure to hold it in. Instead of creating an input cursor, I want an edit range that has an input cursor. We'll call it input range just to be closer. So begin, we'll create an input range, or we'll create a cursor. Its cursor will be the cursor. Its home row will be the cursor's row. Its home column will be the cursor's column. Now, interestingly, what will happen is if I need to wrap and then everything gets moved up, I have to offset where the home row is. So in order to do that, I could have a scroll count or something like that. That's maintained. That is mutable. So this begins a range. It sets the cursor, gets it, scroll count, whatever. This is all set up now. When I complete the edit range, take the cursor, I increment the row, I set the cursor's column back to 0, which is kind of pointless at this point, so we'll take that out. If the cursor's row is greater than or equal to the number of rows, we scroll, then we clear out the input range. Really, I don't need to know this. All I need to know is that the cursor's row plus 1 is greater than or equal to the rows, then I need to scroll 1 up. Okay. So for each character, if I get this, then I'm done with the input range. This actually terminates input. Sort of. I'm gonna have a lot of trouble dealing with this when I get to the editor screen, aren't I? Because there, I don't want it to necessarily terminate based on new lines or return characters. I just want to interpret it different. That means is interpreted as a new line. But in this case, it means just end. That's so dog. So I want this to be usable in the same way that a yeah, so maybe it does make sense to not, so the input program does this, but maybe it doesn't actually do this get input. I'm going to delete this for now and rethink this a little bit. So the computer is going to receive a request to get input, or for input. We can't hold up this thread. And something has to track its state. Yeah, I'm not liking this. I want to get rid of it and just rethink it. It's been a colossal waste of time if you've been watching this one. For anyone watching this one, but I'm solving the problem, but I'm doing it in a very slow way. Because again, I need to think about when I get to doing the editor and how the editor works and how it interprets things slightly different. So in there, it's going to be fairly similar. The stream of data is going to come in, but it's going to be interpreted slightly different in the way that it actually interacts with the yeah, so I think the input program still makes sense. I just don't think the instructions that I'm passing back are making much sense. Okay, let's just solidify. I'm keeping this here. This has to exist, one way or the other. Because something has to keep track of whatever. So the input program, again, will start by... First thing that it needs to do is tell it to display the prompt, but then terminate it at whatever. So it's like, and I eventually want to get into things like highlighting text and all that stuff too. So I want to think about how all this is going to play out. So, so I think having the concept of a command called prompt, which is like this, it works in display every way, but it ends, but it doesn't advance it when it's done. This is a specific home screen command or instruction. We'll just call this text. Which is a publish prompt. New prompt. What in the world is this? Record blah 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 must be a readable instance property of type string to match the positional parameter prompt. Like, these two things have no relation to each other. Is this a why would these be related to each other? That's just so weird. But it's not a big deal, but it's just, I've never... That's an odd one. Okay. So prompt is passed to the computer under menu. And actually, I don't even need... Well, yeah, I'll do it here. And this is just home.prompt.
Like 20?
Huh?
So like 12?
Yeah, because we had that snack, so.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm going to get rid of these for now. Instead, I'm restarting this thought process over again. I think I do need the concept of an input range. I'm going to just delete that for now, even. Okay, so we got prompt. And this will operate as a display without the very last thing. So finds the first empty line. And I can change cursor back to a struct now. Well, it's not a blank row. Finds it, keeps going. If it reaches the end, it scrolls. This is going to take a... I know I've been down this path before. I'm just... Okay, so it finds the row. It then goes through the text and outputs it for the prompt. Increases the column. If it goes past it, then it just... Oh, you know what? Oh yeah, and then it breaks. Okay, so that's going to do that. This input does prompt. I'm just going to do a pause for now. So there it'll be. It'll have that, and then it needs to have a... The prompt basically will need to have the concept of a... So that's just one feature of it. But I think that the prompt is just a... maybe prompt actually needs to return like the location of where it completes. And then I need to have the concept of a edit range or whatever actually be like a first class thing here. Because I could use, I don't need the prompt when I'm doing like the editor, but I will need the ability to just feed input into it or feed a range that can be modified with a cursor in it around in a fairly similar way. Although the prompt in the prompt for a the editor is really just like the new line or the that colon. It's just scrollable, which is not on this one. So this shouldn't really be called prompt. It should probably be called display prompt or something like that. Or maybe it shouldn't even be called that. I guess the other thing is, could I do this with output? The problem with output is that I can't find the new line. I can't find the next row, and I don't have the capability in it to just scroll. It doesn't work quite the same way. This one's got me in a real jam. Is that so, dog? So what if prompt returned as part of it this? So it would scroll, but only if it needs to. So we do if cursor dot column is greater than or equal to Paul's, it does this. And this will be a return immediate. And then we go back to our program root. We say this returns. That's a type. And this is request. So what it's doing for us is it's prompting, or it's outputting a prompt, returning the row in the column that our position ends up. Then what we do is we tell it to something like edit. Sorry. So now we've got the rows and columns that we're at. Now what do we do with that is the question. I guess the big thing is does the home screen receive input or not is what I have to figure out, or is it fed input? I mean, if you think about something like Control V, Control V is a hotkey that then pastes. That Control V combo has to go into a program, outer program. That program then has to grab from something and decide to interpret that as a paste operation. And then it will inject input into the stream and display. I don't know if the console actually does that or if it's the... So in this case, it would really be, there has to be some sort of receiver that interprets the data and then just tells the console what to do, or the home screen what to do. But it's got to be smart enough to be able to do that. I guess I could make a option called scroll that runs just like prompt does, where if I notice that I'm over the edge, that it will scroll. How did I implement this the first time? Probably in a very naive way. Did I even record that? Here. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a very complex operation, but it had access to more stuff than I'm trying to gain access to. I don't really want to think about it in terms of the old way anyways. This was not very conducive to what I was trying to accomplish. You know, one thing I'm thinking is that I mean, I'm treating the home screen like it's not as a series of streams that get modified, but like discrete commands that get operated on. If I restructured this to operate in terms of like an output command would be two operations. The first operation would be to set the cursor position to this row and column. The second command would be, or this thing would be, to feed this into a stream that then gets immediately flushed. But then there is like I said, a difference in the way that input that comes from the output or from this stream operates different than when it comes from this stream, which this one, like, it doesn't wrap the text. This one does. You know, I think I was probably on the right path before. Where I begin input I then flush data into this. Or I don't. Let's see here. If I made scroll of first class citizen, and I made it something I could do, how would that change this dynamic? So now I can invoke scroll myself. The other thing I would need to be able to do is get the dimensions of the thing itself as well. Which I'll need for the editor, I suppose. So let's make another discrete command or thing for what is it with console? Just, yeah. Well, this is actually already publicly available up here in terms of rows and columns. So I don't need to implement it as a discrete thing on this. I can just build that command out. So much like scroll, I want to do public record. I have get dispress, but or set. We'll just do it like this. These don't need to be nice and clean because they are not going to be publicly available. Although maybe they should be eventually, but... scroll. So this will get the home side screen dimensions in rows and columns. So return immediate. I just do a tuple like that, or is it equals? Can't I do tuple? Oh. Is that my problem all along? Program. Okay. So there we can get our size. Shouldn't change while we're inputting, so. So we're gonna get our home dim, we're gonna get our prompt, or get our starting location. Hey Scott, yeah, for now. Still, our thing went for like an hour. I still haven't solved this one problem I'm trying to solve, is the elegant way to do input for this stupid program. Input's such a weird beast in the way that the calculator does it. I don't know. You have to keep track of a lot of stuff if you think about the way a command prompt works, like cursor position and the actual content, and inputting it in the middle of a range like that, and using the home and end keys and selecting and cutting and all of that stuff that if you want to make it really good, you kind of need to do. Isn't obvious how to implement all of that, especially in the way that the calculator implements things, because it's not like a scrollable buffer. Well, it is a scrollable buffer, but you need to have like a edit range object that exists to do those kinds of things, and be able to kind of move around and shift things and output things, and it's weird. And know when to scroll and when not to scroll and whatever. But I think I might try to just get the simplest thing I need to do here, which is to so I've got my starting position and I've got the size that I need to be at. So I think I can use the output, or now I need to have the ability to retrieve input and pipe it in using other commands. So this will be up here. I'm going to restore this begin text. Which will inform the input buffer to begin text input. Input buffer and text input. Return immediate buffer dot get text input. Okay. So those are my instructions. I need to make them available. I just want a simple one to copy. Begin and end are the same. You know, I should just have begin request have a typecast on it as part of it, because I have to cast everything I do with it anyways. But okay, so that feeds me back the data. So input was going to, let's just get the cursor blinking. So prompt will always return on a place where I actually have a cursor, so I gotta find what my cursor is going to be. I think I had one with all F's here. Oh, hello. Cursor render used the character 0, really? Oh yeah, that's right. It didn't use a filled one, it just used a It just said invert the background and foreground when you write it. Derp. So this would be foreground. Actually, I wonder if I could do this. Is that legal? Where is that located? Oh, I suppose I don't technically need to use I don't like that idea, but maybe that's a downside too. I need to put a container in there. So if I just put 0th character in here, something to draw, then I invert them back. That's gonna look super ugly, but really fast blink, but should be anyways. Oh. Oh, ugly. Okay, so how do I do this without doing this ugliness? Without having to actually output. Really, it's like a highlight, or like an invert cell. And then I have to uninvert it the next time around. So I guess I could have a invert. Which just switches the flag on it to invert it. So if I did this, like invert row column, I want you to keep track of this, or highlight maybe. So not yet prepared to add that in, so I'm going to do like this. Did void highlight row and column publish. Well, then I have to have one to unhighlight it, so it's like invert is probably a better. Oh. A better term for it. Oops. Invert dot row, invert column. And that just will reset the colors. So our display well, if it's in range, it will anyways. Which I think I had a range check up here for some of these other ones. I think I need to work on errors one day just as a broad problem. And these are not classes, so this should work just fine. Okay. Oh, I suppose there's nothing there to actually draw. Maybe? It still should work. Okay, so here's my invert. The cell is 0, 0. Oh, well, because there's no color in it yet. Hasn't been written to. Which means what I really should do here is not do this at all, get its colors, but set its... Let's just set the background equal to the foreground, and the foreground equal to the background. So highlight is probably a better term overall, now that I'm getting at this. Because I will have to have a turn off or a... Which is funny because it's really like a low light, right? So it gets turned on, but it's not turning off, obviously. What's the opposite of highlight? Downplay? Antonym of highlight. Maybe highlight isn't the correct term either. I'll do it like this. Change this to the cursor command. We'll figure it out later. So instead of highlight, this will be cursor. Oops.
Huh?
1 second. Oh, anyways, it's progress, I suppose. Getting a blinky cursor. Then I have to make sure the input works. Yeah, I'm gonna still need to rethink this all one day. Okay, well, my daughter's signaling that it's well past her time to get lunch, so I'm going to hang it up for now. Thanks for watching.